All right, welcome to the first event of the fashion side of the 2021 symposium. It is so good to see you all here today. We are here to chat with some amazing alumni. And before we get going, I would like to acknowledge our sponsors. I have like 2 screens, but I feel like I need about 5 in this kind of a setup. So thank you to our wonderful sponsors of the 2021 Student Symposium. Without you, we could not pull off this wonderful event. So thank you. It really means the world to us that you acknowledge our wonderful program and that you support us the way you do. So for our alumni panel today, we have Jillian Vonder, who is a design and development consultant with Jillian Vonder. Great to have you here today. If you want to wave for us in our little squares here, great. And we have Madison Brockman, who is a retail operations analyst with Hanes Brand Incorporated. We also have Ariana Levin, who is a senior designer at Adore.me. You can wave for us.
Hello.
Hi, good morning. And we have Bailey Ragsdale, a buyer at Pottery Barn.
Hi.
For us. Good morning. All right, so for today's alumni panel, we actually asked our own students to submit questions for our alumni. What do they want to hear? What do they want to know about? And so these are all actually student questions that were submitted to faculty members and that we put together. And so they actually put them into a PowerPoint so that we could see them on the screen. And as each question comes up, I'm going to ask the panelists to one by one answer the questions for us. I'm gonna keep my chatting down to a very bare minimum because everyone hears me talk enough. And we really want to hear about what's happening currently in the fashion industry. So I'm really excited to get going. Our first set of questions are, what was your major, minor at K-State? What year did you graduate? What did you think you wanted to do when you first arrived at K-State? And then how did that evolve during your time here? And so Madison, if you want to kick us off.
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks, Kelsey. So I went to K-State for the apparel and textile program, and I did not do a minor, but I had previously, I was a transfer student from community college. So I had an associate's in business, and then I transferred into K-State for 3 years and was in the apparel and textile program. Graduated with Bailey actually in 2018, I believe. It feels so long ago. And what I think I wanted to do going into K-State versus what I ended up doing. So I actually signed up, it's a funny story. I signed up for hospitality, first of all, in human ecology. And I wasn't even in it a week before I switched to apparel and textile. I got a small boutique job for my hometown, a small store in my hometown. Turned out I loved fashion, apparel, textiles. I love the retail aspect. I love all the KPIs that go into it. And so I switched over to apparel and textiles in Kansas State.
Jillian, how about you?
Hey guys, it's always fun to do this. I was a apparel and textiles design production major, and then I minored in French. I graduated in 2011, which is like so long ago now. And not too much changed. I think I just honed in on from when I started the university to when I left. I thought I was gonna also do like history and philosophy and a minor in Russian and come out and write coffee table books about fashion and philosophy. But I ended up just focusing on fashion and then also French. And when I came out, I actually ended up starting with technical design and production for Abercrombie and Fitch. And so it was just, a great opportunity, and took that path down there, and that got me into the industry. So it was really awesome.
Ariana?
Hello, also so fun to be here again. My major was apparel and textile design as well. I originally started with a minor in business, quickly learned that's not how my brain worked, and so I dropped that to focus on design. I graduated in 2015, and then from when I first started, I always had the idea I wanted to go into intimate apparel. And same as Jillian, throughout the program and throughout my years at K-State, really honed in and like really focused in that specific area of design. Um, and then right after school, also focused with that area, got internships there and working in that space.
And Bailey, how about you?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. I majored in apparel and textile marketing, so I think would fall under fashion business now. And I got a minor in business as well as public relations or mass communications. I went into college knowing that I wanted to be a buyer. That was kind of the dream job, but I didn't know a lot about it. And so I did explore a lot of different ideas within fashion and event planning while I was in school. So I got the public relations minor. I did an internship in fashion public relations. And then through all of that, ended up being a buyer anyway. But yeah, that's kind of how it evolved for me.
Fascinating. It's so interesting to hear about what you thought you might want to do and what you quickly learned maybe it wasn't quite a right fit. So I love hearing these stories. Okay, so went to K-State, obviously had a great time, probably went to a few football games, I'm just guessing. What was your post-college career path? What did you start off doing? What jobs have you had along the way? And what are you doing now? Let's start with Madison. We'll do the same pattern.
All righty. So my post-career college path, it started with Hanes Brands, where I'm currently at. So I've been with them about 2 years now, recently receiving a promotion last November. And then I started with them, we started with them with Hanes Brands here in North Carolina as a coordinator, a retail coordinator for the department. And now I am a retail operations analyst that focuses more on special projects and sustainability within the retail stores in the country. So I oversee all of the Champion and the Hanes stores in the country and more of the operational aspects of them. And what jobs have I had until I got there? So I was the retail operations analyst. And then now I was a coordinator, now I'm an analyst. But that's how I got to where I am right now.
Interesting. Okay, Jillian, how about you?
It has been a little more of a meandering of a path, and that's probably just from time past. In college, I did 2 internships. One was local in Kansas City with a textile couturier, and then my for credit one was out in Los Angeles with a designer in a design house, and fell in love with Los Angeles, kind of knew I always wanted to come back. And so went back to school. And from there, I went to Abercrombie & Fitch, where I did technical production. And I started in men's athleisure. And knowing kind of like Ariana that I wanted to go into swimmer lingerie aspect, shifted my way into women's swimmer production. I was there almost 3 years. Then I went over to Justice and did their design program. Then finally moved back out to Los Angeles. And I was applying for jobs and working in a wine shop part-time, and ended up meeting a phenomenal woman who does swimwear. She did Target and Kohl, and ended up going on board with her off and on for various projects for the past 5 years, I would say. And within that, have been able to also do then my consulting and private labels and my own brand on the side. So it's just been kind of a really crazy path, but super fun. It's definitely a lot different going from corporate to freelance, and that's just been a whole new world. But I love it, and I love the flexibility. So
That's amazing. Oh, wow. That's really cool. Good to hear. Good to hear making connections in places that, just never know when it's going to happen. How about you, Ariana?
So my career path started with my internship that I did for K-State for the program's credit. I always knew that I wanted to move to New York, so I had my internship here with a small intimates brand called Sapphire Bliss. Became really close with the designer at the company, and she really helped me make sure I could move to New York afterwards. So I actually continued to freelance with her through my senior year at school. And so she kind of helped me build up my resume, and then she agreed that if I didn't have a job after graduation, that no matter what, she would help me like move to New York, let me continue to freelance. I then was able to get an internship with a company called Negative Underwear, which is also another small independent bra and lingerie brand here in New York. And so after graduation, I moved with unpaid internships. I essentially had saved throughout college and told myself, I want to live in New York. I'm going to make it happen. I have X amount of dollars for X amount of months, and I have to find an actual paying job before that runs out. And so with those internships, that really helped kind of build my experience, more honing in on intimates and swim. And then I got my job at a dormy the summer of 2015, at the end of the summer. And I've been with Adore since, so almost 6 years now. I started as an assistant designer, and the design team, there were only 3 of us on the team at the time. There's now 10 of us total. So it's been a lot of fun kind of growing the team. And then from assistant, I went from associate designer and now senior designer. So I've kind of moved up within the company, and then have a team of 2 that I work with. And I specifically work on swimwear, sleep and loungewear. I oversee our standalone panty category. I'm also in charge of all of the print and trend development, and also colorways with my boss. And what's been really great at Adore Me is that I kind of got to, since it was such a small team, I had my hands in everything, and then could really see like what I really like, what was I excited about, and kind of got to sculpt my responsibilities around that. It's definitely not the case at all companies, but I'm really grateful, and it's a really fun job.
That's amazing to hear. I also wanted to circle back, Ariana and Jillian. Can you explain to our students what freelance means, what you kind of had to do for these freelance jobs? That would be really great. You can start, Ariana.
Yeah, so when I was freelancing, essentially, you get, depending on the project or the work that needs to be done, you'll kind of I would clock my hours that I was working for her during my senior year, and have kind of weekly email touch bases of, okay, she needed, say, some measurements done or tech packs filled out. She would give me just the general information, and then I would complete the work. Since I was still kind of I would say like still in college, there was some information I didn't know. So I think Jillian has some other experience being further along in her career and knowledge base with freelance. But mine was essentially just kind of given different projects, almost kind of like homework, but then the hours I got paid for, which was nice.
That's great. Jillian, what about you?
I like the homework analogy. That's
But you get paid.
exactly. Paid with education, I guess. So I mean, after school now, it's a lot of kind of using that networking and connections and keeping those up. So while you're still, offering your services to people then, oh, I need a trend packet done. I know someone who can put it together quickly, that I can call and do. Or for instance, like a woman who has a philanthropist athletic wear line. She's like, oh, you do swimwear? I would love to do a swimwear line. And it's like, cool, let's do it. So yeah, it's just very project based. Like Ariana said, you can either keep track of your hours and bill hourly, or do project based. just kind of going into this, I'll usually have like a beginning or, kind of initial thing. And then from there, when you get to meet with the client and discuss more about the project, or even, do a couple hours of it and then regroup, just so you can have a better idea of the time and also the scope of your efforts it will take. It's not going to be the same of doing just like, hey, can you put together a couple tech packs for me? And here it is, some designs I would like catted, versus, hey, we're trying to move our factories from Asia to LA. Can you help us with sourcing? So it's just kind of wearing a bunch of hats at once, and not necessary. And I like to think about it, you're using almost everything you learned in school, which some things you're like, man, I never thought I would use this. And you're like, okay. But it's almost, K-State, I think, does a really great job of applying and teaching you problem solving skills and just general skills on how to tackle different projects and opportunities that come along. And it's just taking that format and applying it to that project, and getting the consumer and the client what they want, and making sure that they're happy and feel like that, they got the good end of the deal, I suppose.
Amazing. Thanks, Jillian. Okay, great. Bailey, do you want to tell us about your post-college career path?
Sure. Yeah. So by the end of my senior year, I kind of knew I really wanted to go into buying. And I was willing to move anywhere. I really didn't have one particular city in mind. So I was very open-minded and ready to just move wherever the job took me. So I was applying and interviewing vigorously that whole summer after senior year, and nothing was feeling like the right move. And then I interviewed at Pottery Barn, and I just fell in love I was already a fan of the brand, but I fell in love with the team. And I had never been to California before, but I had 3 weeks once I accepted the job to move to San Francisco. So I did, I made the move, and I've been at Pottery Barn ever since. So it's been almost 4 years now. So I started as the assistant buyer. I've been on the same team the entire time. So I've worked in the flooring department, which falls under the textiles umbrella at Pottery Barn. So I started as the assistant buyer, and then I was promoted to the associate buyer. And then just a year ago, I was promoted to buyer. So still within the flooring department, but held several different hats along the way.
Wonderful, and congrats. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, and I do want to say that if any students or anyone else has any questions, just go ahead and put it in the chat, and either I'll ask if it's appropriate to the questions we're talking about, or we'll wait to the last 15 minutes and we can fill in some other questions. So we'll keep rolling here. All right, back to Madison first. What are your job responsibilities now, and what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What does your day look like? What are some of the favorite parts of your job? And what are some unexpected things that you do in your job that maybe people wouldn't ever think about?
Yeah, for sure. So job responsibilities and favorite parts. Every day, especially in retail, I think we all know it's not the same. I think we can all vouch for that. Not every day is the same, especially in retail. Things change every day. The market changes every day. Consumers change every day, and their buying habits change every day. So you always have to be on your toes. Every day is different. Daily responsibilities, I would say, is a lot more for me, is reporting what are our daily sales look like versus what are the targets in the country. So our operating profit commitment versus our actual sales. So we're looking at that, and are we above, are we negative, are we profiting, or we're not? I also do a lot with projects. So a lot of my day-to-day is a lot of project-based, things, I guess. But we do a lot of store openings, store closings, store relocations. So I do a lot of the physical, what is going on with the store itself. So dependent on lease commitments in different malls in the country, we might find a better deal somewhere else. We'll relocate that store. If it's in a better mall complex, we'll close it or we'll open another one. So every year and every quarter of the year, we look at What is our portfolio? Where are our stores located? Where can they be located? Where do we want them to be located? So we really keep up that portfolio of stores. So I do a lot with that, and that's in the real estate realm of stores, which I didn't know. I didn't know was a thing until I got into the industry. So there's a whole real estate department within, within our company. And so I deal a lot with the realtors and the facilities people. And I do a lot of supply projects within the stores that directly affect consumers and the employees. Most recently, I redesigned all of the name badges that employees wear in Champion, Hanes, and Maidenform stores. Contacted, the procurement department. We sourced them, we pushed them out to stores. I had to write a standard operating procedure that was then also published to stores, because if you push a product, you have to push a procedure that aligns with it so employees know the standard of what that product is. So most recently, right now, I'm working on gift cards. We're redesigning gift cards, looking at the legal terminology on them. There's a lot of cross-department functionality in my job, and I think I think everyone can vouch for that. You have to be a team player. You have to, if you need help, you always reach out to other departments. There's a procurement department, there's a real estate, there's finance. And so getting one project done is really interesting, because you might have to get 5 departments involved in that one project when you're like, oh, it's just name badges, but does it need to go through legal? Does it need to go through procurement? Does it need to go through sourcing? And so it's really interesting that one small thing has a huge effect. And right now I'm also working on shopping bags and their sustainability efforts with those, and that's really interesting. So we're looking at our plastic consumption versus paper consumption. We have to look at the coordinates in the municipalities across the country to make sure we're aligned with those. So that's some of what I do. Mostly is project-based and store-focused.
Fascinating. I always love to hear about sustainability efforts that our alumni are participating in. What about you, Jillian?
I agree with Madison, where every day is different and new challenges. Lately, it's just been managing and a lot of time management, from getting the official LLC license and working with an accountant and state licenses and doing a bunch of just legal and business research, which probably isn't my favorite part. I much prefer the creating and going down and sourcing fabrics and sketching and being inspired and producing. That's, I would say, my favorite. But you never know what you're going to do on a day-to-day basis. Whether you may have a plan and then fires arise and you have to put them out, or new priorities happen, and it's just managing everything that you have to do, especially when you're owning your own business. And it's like, oh, at corporate, I loved it. Be like, okay, I'm going to go to the sourcing team and ask them. Whereas it's like, okay, I need this sourced. Okay, now I have to figure out how to source this. Okay, now, like, do I need to contact someone, or is this something I can do myself? And kind of just going through knowing what is time efficient for you to do versus bringing in other people's.
Did I freeze?
Trying to do coding and various technology things. That's not my forte. I'm much design oriented, obviously. And I think I was sitting with my partner when we were driving to a conference in Vegas, and we're sitting there and I'm connecting. I don't even remember the 3 letters of the CEO, XCO, to this, to that, to the back end, while I'm in the car running internet off my phone. Like, I never thought I would be doing anything like that. But it's just great, and everything that's unexpected, you feel empowered when you accomplish and do, and it gives you this confidence. It's like, oh, well, I never knew I could do that, but I did that, and it actually didn't, like, no one died and everything's working. So, okay, like, it helps build up your confidence and then applying that to also the things that you do expect to do more and have just that sense of self and ownership.
Great. That's fascinating. You have so many hats you have to wear. Jillian, that's really interesting to hear. How about you, Ariana?
I would definitely agree. Days are not the same.
Agree.
At Adore Me, we work in seasons, but we have a new launch of assortment every single month. So we do follow a cadence of a monthly calendar and deadlines that we have throughout the month that repeats every month, every year. And so depending on where we are in the assortment plan, that kind of dictates what I'll be doing that week. So for an example, my day today, I woke up, I did lab dips. So we are still working from home majority. So you see my lovely office and my dining room kitchen behind me. I have a giant stack of lab dips, which lab dips, essentially once we pick the colorway, the factory then will send color swatches and the correct materials, components. And so like pages and pages of little swatches, and it's A or B that we then check back to Pantone standards to make sure that everything will be matching in the garments. So with working from home, this responsibility is actually shifted back to me. Normally in the office, it's spread between the team. But with working from home, we kind of had to adjust where our factories were sending everything. We couldn't have them send things to 10 different addresses. So we had to kind of streamline who was doing what this past year. So I've done lab dips. We are working on our April 2022, sorry, years get confused. April 2022 assortment. And so I was working on print colorways also. And then I've had meetings, emails. Later today, I'm actually going to be going into the office. I'm doing an Instagram live with one of our sister brands. And so we have multiple different sister brands also at Adore Me. There's one, Gen True. It's actually a sustainable activewear brand. And so I'm doing a live workout session with them.
All right.
So
Write that down.
Also hands in lots of different pots. Like I said earlier, my main responsibilities really are design, trend research, and building out the assortment for sleep, loungewear, swimwear, and the panties, but also kind of hats in different areas. I would say one of my favorite parts of my job has actually been pushing sustainability throughout the company. I'm a big member of the kind of core group in the company that is working on this. So in the past year, we've built 3 different tools that we're using to analyze on our warehouse and operation side, kind of in the office. On the factory side, how we're evaluating our manufacturers, our partners overseas. And then also an assessment matrix of our product, of like we call it the AIM Adore Me Impact Matrix. So that part I was really heavily involved with, of how we rate and grade our product. So we look at different impact areas of fiber, water, waste, and chemicals, and essentially rate from 0, kind of what we're saying, industry standard, dirtiest, worst, 5 to North Star, best of the best, lowest impact. And it's been a lot of fun because we're partnering a lot with our manufacturers, looking for different kind of consultants, experts in this field to figure out how can we as design work better into the space, make smarter decisions, and have product that is just better for the environment.
That's great. Ariana, before I move on, Dr. Hard did have a direct question to this. Do you see more tolerance in lab dips due to sustainability? Meaning, does Adore Me accept a little bit more, more flexible on color when it comes to lab dips, or we spot on?
I would say it depends on what it is. I would say out of me being the only one doing all of the lab dips. So to give an example, like each month we launch about, I would say 40 brand new products, new colorways. So for the past year, every month I'm checking 40 products plus all of our sister brands. Also, I get those lab dips. So there's been a wider tolerance because if it's commercially acceptable, I don't want to see it again. And so it kind of also goes back into the sustainability. Like if it's close enough, I don't want them to have to redip, go through that process, also then ship it to me again. It's just not necessary.
Great. Great to know. Okay. Bailey, how about you? What are your job responsibilities? Favorite part of your job? Some unexpected things?
Yes, I feel like job responsibilities is always so hard to answer because if you work in the retail capacity, it's like, what are you not doing? So it's hard to answer directly without being all over the place. But as a merchant, we're wearing so many different hats. We're kind of like the center point of all other functions in the business. So I manage flooring, but I'm working with sourcing and design and marketing and visual merchandising and so many other different departments. So the core of my job and like what my main responsibilities are is to work with our design partners and create strategies around what product we want to sell at Pottery Barn. And then I get to kind of filter through what design brings to us and decide what we're going to sell based on strategy, sales performance, all of those things. But we're always working in like 5 different seasons. So last week we just wrapped up assorting spring 22. I'm about to write strategies for summer 22. We just launched summer 21. And we're just always in the middle of so many different things. So day to day definitely looks different, week to week looks different. But a lot of what I do is meeting with my cross-functional partners, kind of making sure we're all aligned to the goal, like everyone has the vision of where we're going and everyone's kind of completing their pieces of that to make sure we're on track. I do a lot of presenting. So when we assort a new line, I have to present that back to the president of our company and our lead designer to kind of say, this is what we're standing for and convince them that they're giving me money to buy the right things. I do a lot of reporting on business. So every Monday we have Monday business reviews. So I have to read sales from the prior week. Was it good? Was it bad? What promos were we running? Kind of what's going on. So there's a lot of different things and I could speak for hours on all the different things we do. But I think my favorite part is, and kind of what drew me to buying, is picking the product. I love to be the one that is the expert on my business and like be a business owner of flooring within Pottery Barn and decide based on what I've learned what we're going to sell and what we're going to stand for. And then I get to share that with everyone else in the company. So that's my favorite part. Unexpected things. It's not always glamorous. So a lot of my days I'm like lugging 8x10, 5x8 rugs around the office. It's like carrying bodies everywhere and it's hot, it's sweaty, and it's not always glamorous. So that's just one example.
That sounds like a great workout.
It is.
Good. Okay, great. We're moving on. We're going to go into the COVID questions because it is on everyone's minds right now. You don't have to like answer each bullet point, but if you can give us some ideas here. I know Madison and I were talking before the panel. It's been so different. Just this last year has changed so much. So how is the fashion industry overall changing due to COVID that you see? How has your job changed as a result of COVID? And then how can our students better prepare themselves for this changing fashion industry? What types of skills and knowledge are currently in demand? What do they need to thrive after they leave here? Madison, if you want to kick it off.
Yeah, for sure. And they started mowing outside, so I apologize if you hear that.
That's fine. That's fine.
Like we were talking about before, Kelsey, the fashion industry has definitely changed. And it's really interesting not only to see the trend that is changing with what consumers are buying, because we all know loungewear was up last year and that's taken a severe decline in the last couple months, the last fiscal quarter, and risen has, the more dressy apparel. So it's really interesting to see the product flux with what's going on with the economy, what's going on with the world, and what's going on with income and gross income within households. So that's really interesting to watch, especially in the fashion industry, because it's always changing and the consumers always, their wants are always changing. I think for us in the apparel industry, I think it is a lot of us are working from home. Like Ariana, Jillian, we're all still working from home. We've worked from home. I've worked from home since March, which has, it is a little difficult because samples, for example, or lab dips like Ariana was talking about, or samples of new products or supplies we're going to launch, they all have to be shipped to your house. And it's just, it brings in a lot of different aspects, and then you have to ship them other places. So that part, it kind of gets under my skin because we're not being the most sustainable in the at-home factor if we have to ship between homes or offices or buyers. But that being said, a lot of offices, and I've watched the industry, have closed, if not have changed from working from home. For example, Target in Minneapolis, they recently sold their lease on their building downtown. And that just will make jobs for Target that much more competitive tenfold, because now they can hire anyone in the country or the world. And I think that is very, very important to keep top of mind, because that just means that you need to make your resume that much more attractive, because you are now not competing against a select group of people that are willing to move to Minneapolis. You are competing against everyone in the country or the world that is also applying for that job. And like what Bailey said earlier, I just wanted to touch on that too. Being flexible in where you are willing to move for a job, if that is still applicable for that company, is so important, because that just means you're dedicated to getting that job and working for that company.
So how has your job then changed? I mean, just other than working from home, what else are you taking on? New responsibilities? Are you?
Yeah, so over the last year, since I dabble more in the supply realm for the stores, last year was just a storm. We had to supply, hand sanitizer. We had to supply disinfectant for stores, hundreds of gallons, thousands of gallons across the country, that had to be not only procured in a very, very tight industry, because at that point, everyone was needing those supplies to operate. And then not only procuring it, but then also distributing it to stores across the country. And that was really interesting time, because if stores didn't have, dependent on their municipalities and their county laws, so we had to track what is the state law, what is the county law, and what is the municipality law for that store to operate. So that was really interesting. So then we had an ongoing list of, if this store doesn't have hand sanitizer, they're not allowed to open, because that is against the law currently held at that time. So it was I think we were all exhausted after, that couple months, March, April, May, June, because that's when everything it took that hit. All of these requirements were put into play. We had to procure very fastly. We had to distribute even more fast. And then not only, like what I said before, when you distribute something to the stores, procedures also have to align, so stores know how to use and what are the expectations. So overnight, we had to procure these supplies, but then also we had to write a handbook, a COVID handbook, procedure playbook, basically, of what if this happens, do this, what if this happens, do this. And these are our new standards of cleanliness in all stores within the country, and this is the basic. So it was really interesting in that fact of how it affected the stores in my realm.
Interesting. Okay, well, good job hanging in there through all that. Sounds like it was really stressful for sure. Jillian, what about you? What have you seen?
Well, I mean, everything has just completely changed. It was a little unnerving. I was at Magic in Vegas, which is like a big design sourcing conference, beginning of February, and I'm at a dinner with a group of like merger and acquisition bankers, and one of them turns to me and he's like, "Well, retail's going to be dead," and that's the last thing a designer wants to hear. from a financial person. Like, please, no, like, I love retail. This is what we do. And then a month later, they shut everything down. And it was definitely like, okay, it's not. And I remember I looked at him and I go, well, old retail is dead. It's been dying. This whole brick and mortar, this whole big box, everything has been shifting. And I think kind of what COVID did is just put the nail in the coffin of this new way of buying, this really focus on sustainability. There's been a huge shift in the way that the consumer has purchased. And it's been really interesting with them having all this extra time to really research and procure the product that they're consuming. And we see, you know, almost in swimwear, almost every brand is like, this is how we're sustainable. You know, Hanes, Adore Me, like Pottery Barn, everyone's really saying, you know, this is what our company is doing. And because now the consumer has the time and is more apt to demand that transparency. And so there's a lot more accountability, which I think is phenomenal. I love that, you know, just people don't think, oh, you get it in China, it may be a, you know, fair wage, good factory, but then, okay, what about the transmission back and forth? As Ariana and Madison were speaking of like lab dips and samples, you know, how much are we sending back and forth? How is this carbon footprint? So it's not just saying, oh, you know, we use this recycled fabric. It's, oh, getting into those layers and really having that exposure of COVID, that the company now is just more responsible for their product overall and company culture. I think also you've seen a lot of big brands or companies die off and an emergence of small boutique, local, or a lot of like Instagram brands. There's some brands who trust the person already. For example, Emily Ratajkowski's brand. And sorry, I have an unstable internet connection if I go out.
Okay, I'm here. I mean, you did cut out for a second, but you're back.
Well, Emily Ratajkowski's brand blew up and did amazing. She was very transparent. She's always been, you know, very women focused, and just consumers knowing that the person who's in charge of their brand, they feel that they're empowered, like they're enveloping those values and wearing those values and not just wearing something cute and fleeting, but their purchases are standing for something. And that's been really exciting to see. I believe that going into this and working from home and having, you know, not these big box, you know, Target is not the only one getting rid of headquarters. Amazon is half in, half out. There's been just so much working remote. Is really just being accountable for your time management. And, you know, even if like it's throwing on a blazer in the morning over your sweatpants or something, and giving yourself, you know, still projecting that professional vibe and having that accountability, you know, to yourself and to your employer or your client of, okay, like the rules may be a little different, but that shouldn't hinder the value of your work and your efforts. And just knowing that, you know, they can still trust you and you will still deliver for them is very, very important.
Okay, good advice. Thank you. Thank you, Jillian. Okay, Ariana, what do you think? What have you seen? What can you tell us about this changing world in fashion?
We were really fortunate at Adore Me because we are predominantly an online brand already. So we already held that space in the market. And this last year and a half has actually been the best growth that the company's had since we launched. So we kind of, sadly, we say that our company was built for COVID. We own our own warehouse. And so we immediately put into all the like restrictions, all of the safety precautions immediately. We gave our whole warehouse team sanitizer as well, face masks, personal protective pieces and everything. And being online, the customers already used to shopping us there. And so a a little opposite of what Madison mentioned about loungewear, we're still seeing a huge uptick in our lounge and sleep categories. And so that's been really fun for me because I get to design more into that. Through the whole process, it really made all of us streamline all of our steps. And so like they were mentioning samples, everything being shipped. So we used to obviously have everything sent to the office, and then we all went to our homes. And so I get all of the lab dips, but then there's different steps of sampling that we would get. And we looked at all of the steps and we're like, what can we cut out? We don't have room in our apartments and our houses to hold all of these samples. What do we actually not need? And it's been really nice and like this big kind of purge that we've done through our steps in development. And we just recently moved offices. And so we're planning on when we start going back into the offices, we aren't going to be getting these samples and pieces of the puzzle that we kind of took out during COVID. There's no plan to putting them back in, which we're all really looking forward to. And then I would say for students, better preparing themselves. So even though I am very much a creative design person in the company, I still have to look and work with our merchandisers, with sales analysis. When I'm working on colorways, I don't just pick what I think is prettiest. I look at what is our customer buying into, what were the top sellers of this month last year, what's happening in the season. And so I think really understanding a bit of like data driven. So everyone is so technology focused. So having that understanding of data and understanding numbers is really important even in design. And I think also a lot of small startups, they kind of work more like that because you're going to be wearing lots of different hats and kind of hands in different pots and responsibilities. And I think just flexibility is also a very good skill to have. Like, be open to, you know, maybe a position isn't 100% what you're looking for. But if there's something that interests you, if the company values match with yours, what I found like with different friends, like I was really fortunate to find a company that their values and interests really aligned with my own. And I have different friends here in New York that they've bounced around jobs a lot, mostly because they realize the team that they're working with isn't a right fit, isn't a right match. And so when they find the right team, the right values of the company, that almost outweighs sometimes what they're specifically working on.
That makes perfect sense. You're spending so much time at work, it should be an enjoyable place to be, right? Yeah. All right, Bailey, what have you seen?
Yeah, so totally agree with what everyone has said so far. And I'm still working from home. We just started a hybrid model this week. So merchants are going into the office 2 days a week. And that's really, like Madison was saying, like we have to review samples, we have to approve samples and all of that. So we've still had samples sent to the office, and employees have had to go in as needed to approve. But some of the biggest changes are definitely like supply chain and product approvals. We used to have a sourcing team that would go every quarter to India for rugs and, you know, be in the factories, approve samples there, all of that stuff. It was just so much easier without having to send samples over and over back and forth to the US. And now we are having to do that. So we're a little bit later in our timeline to approving, which then is a domino effect to manufacturing, to shipping them to our DCs, to getting them launched online. It's just taking a lot longer. So our product has to have more, I guess, more legs to live longer because it takes longer to get new product online. So anyway, you just have to think about the supply chain and kind of like we're hearing about cargo ships are stuck at ports. They're not able to, it's really hard to import anything from overseas right now. So anyway, just every function has been affected. And I think the skills that are really important right now more than ever is communication. You really have to be a strong communicator, both over Zoom now and over the phone, and not just email and in person like it used to be. But I think that should be easier for everyone. So I hope everyone takes advantage of that. Like when you're on Zoom, you can have your notes open right there in front of you, which is a little bit easier to present that way than if you're in person. So I just think there are some things that are working in our favor. And then another thing I think is really important is to be a problem solver. So I think everyone can acknowledge like the pandemic has been an issue, COVID has been hard, but I think if you can show up and offer creative solutions to different pain points that you're experiencing, it really helps a lot of our processes in the long run. And so then when life goes back to normal, we feel like we're a little bit stronger than we were before. So anyway, those are just a few like business overall points that we've seen in COVID. But luckily I work for a company that is in the home furnishings realm and everyone has been at home. So we had a record year last year, which is really exciting. So it's been fun to build on that and like see a lot of success that way.
That's great. Okay. Moving on, because time is so fleeting here. Some more direct kind of questions about what are some of the ways that students can stand out to employers through their resumes and cover letters? What should students include in their portfolios and their resumes, overall? And what general advice do you have for recent graduates or soon-to-be graduates who are searching for a job? Because that's on everybody's mind right now. Madison, if you can kick it off.
Yeah, so this is my favorite question is my advice.
Okay, great, perfect. Everyone is
So
so
I wish someone would have given me this advice, so I'm hopefully able to give it all to you. But the fashion industry is very tight. You are not going to get your first job that you apply for. You have to spread your resume amongst, you can't just aim for one company. You have to get top 10, top 15, top 20 companies you want to work for. Just like Bailey shaking her head. It is hard. It is very competitive. And that just means that your cover letter and your resume, I have to say it again, just has to be that much more top notch. And by competitive, I also want to warn that it's going to take time. You're not going to get it. Maybe you are one of the lucky few that get a job in a week, but it took me 6 months and 400 applications. And I went to the career services at K-State and they just gave me that motivation to keep going. You have to, because you also want to make sure that your job aligns with your values as a person, your values that you want to work for in a company, because that's who you're going to be spending the most time with over the next few years, is your position, your team, and your workplace. So making sure that the sustainability initiatives line up with your own, the environmental issues line up with your own, and the company culture is a right fit. So I want to give the advice of don't settle. Make sure you know your standards, but also just keep it up. Don't give up and just keep up the perseverance in the game is who is going to win at the end and get the job. It's really the perseverance. But to make yourself stand out in a resume and a cover letter, I think right now, since most people have a bachelor's and have all this experience, but I think that a lot of companies are looking at not only who can do the job, but who's going to bring value to the company, who's going to sign up for the environmental committee, who's going to sign up for the young leaders leadership committee, who's going to sign up for the volunteer and the community committee. So not only who can show up, do the job well, but who's also going to bring value in other aspects of the company and who is going to really get involved and make a change.
That is fantastic advice. And I did hear from from one of our seniors that the advice to them was, you should be involved in the community now as students. You should be getting out there and volunteering and showing that you care about more than your grades and what's happening at school, So I think that's really great advice. I think Jillian accidentally got kicked off. Jillian, are you back with us? Ariana, why don't you go ahead and take it, and then when Jillian gets back, we'll go to her.
Sounds good. I completely agree with Madison. Also, it's definitely difficult and right now not any easier with the amount of people who lost jobs throughout this year. My partner lost his job in October and is still searching. He works in healthcare, so very different industry. Um, but I think being patient with it and not giving up is really important. It can be very diminishing and kind of dwindle on your confidence. But I would say, in my experience, like the education you're getting at K-State is a really good education. Everyone that I've worked for, they've always said like, wow, like especially in my internships, like first starting, they were very impressed with the knowledge that I had, and that really all came from K-State. Um, and things to stand out in resumes and cover letter and also portfolios on the design side. Have an online portfolio. Pretty sure K-State has you make that. Absolutely have that. When I'm hiring people, if there's not a link on the resume, on their LinkedIn, if I can't easily see your designs, I'm just gonna move past it. Make it easy to click on, get to up at the top, kind of where your email information is. All of that should also be your portfolio link. Very like organized and clean resumes. Make sure that if you're skimming it, the key main points you want to get across, the things you really want to convey about yourself, of your skills or what you're going to bring to this company, are really easily seen and like pinpointed in how you're writing. And then also for portfolios, it's great to show kind of a wide breadth of what you've worked on through school. If you're really wanting to go into a certain area, show that you'll take the extra steps, like do your own small little project that you've analyzed that company, you understand their consumer, and have the first thing in your portfolio that they're going to be seeing relating back to that brand, back to their consumer, back to what they're already making. So if you're, applying to a handbag company, you probably don't want to be showing a ton of silk night, like intimates and those sort of things. You want to show that you understand the material, the construction, and vice versa. If you're applying to, a dormy, I don't want to see handbags. And also I think also just doing your research and not just applying to everything just because you're quote unquote qualified, that you really understand what the company stands for, like Madison said, and that you've done your due diligence of aligning, making sure that your cover letter, have a template cover letter, but then take things from the job description from the company and kind of add that back in. Show that you did the research into knowing what this company stands for and what the position really means.
Real quick, directly to that, is it better to have a creative resume that stands out, or is it better to kind of have a cookie cutter resume that is easily scanned through with the application? Well, this is for application software, or for you, like which one do you?
So my company, we don't use application software. I would say it doesn't have to be just black and white, like a Word document. If you want to, have kind of, there's a lot that have a like colored kind of sidebar, and some, I would say, don't make it overly creative. It makes it a little difficult to read. And for me, like we don't have a recruiter. And so when we're hiring people, I'm the one taking hours out of my day sifting through resumes. And if there's a lot of things like in the background, it just makes it more difficult to go through. And I think on the creative side, like I want to see your creativity in your portfolio. Your resume is so I can understand like what's your past experience, what are your skills, and then your portfolio should really speak to that.
Okay. Jillian, are you back? Jillian. How about Bailey?
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, Jillian, you're back. You're sorry, you got lost in my squares, and so.
My apologies.
No worries at all.
I'm on the road. It's not the best connection.
Oh, that's totally fine.
I definitely think, to answer to kind of refer Hannah's question really quickly, I have both. So I have, and like we're talking, you know, Madison saying apply for, you know, have all your tiers, have a couple different resumes, you know, that way you're just prepared. If you're going through Indeed or LinkedIn, if it's like, okay, you know, wide scope, you know, these are in my, you know, they're not my top 5 companies, but these are, you know, 40 jobs that I would be happy to get an interview for. Have that basic resume that you can just run through that their system can pick up. So you're not spending time and you're being able to focus your efforts on your top tier ones. If it's, you know, this is my dream job, I'll go back and spend, you know, a week working, tailoring my resume, pulling in words that they use in their job descriptions, doing a full cover letter that's very specific to that client or position. But, you know, if, especially at the beginning, when you're just applying for jobs, you can definitely have just a cookie cutter resume that's going to be read through all the application software, and that, you know, then you can.
Oh, there's that unreliable connection again.
I'll go back and ask, hey, for future reference, like, you know, what did you see in me? What skills stood out that, because then, you know, then you also see what they really hired you for. And it's like, oh, I loved this aspect of it. It's like, okay, great. This is what they really want me to bring to the table then. So, you know, it's hindsight on what you're doing well as, you know, if it doesn't work out, then you can, you know, still also ask for feedback and get the full range of that feedback. For the portfolios, definitely tailoring to the job. Like, you know, just if you're applying for swimsuits, shows you can design swimsuits. But it's also been important to, you know, kind of for employers to see your process. Like, here's your final design, but how did you get here? Are you able to create the tech pack? Did you do trend research? They want to see how you think and how you go about making your decisions. And I would also say when you're, you know, don't just focus like, yes, I can, don't focus on your skills of I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Talk about, I was able to do 20 tech packs in 2 days to help my team meet a deadline for this. How did your skills contribute to the team and to meeting their goals? Like, since I've joined this team, you know, sales or in this group project, I use this, you know, set of skills, and we received a 98% or something on this. Show how what you're doing translates into results. That would be advice.
Okay, good, great advice. And Bailey?
Yeah, I thought that was really good advice. I think that's my number one thing is like, I don't care what your experience is in the past. You might have 0 experience in merchandising, but if you can tell me like how what you've done so far, how those skills will help me and in this job, if you're hired, that's so important, is just being able to translate what you've done and how it will help the company you're interviewing for. But yeah, I would say things are definitely more competitive now. Just for an example, we had a buyer position open recently, and normally we would probably interview like 4 candidates, and we had about 20 candidates for the position. So that's been a recent change in the last year just with COVID. And I know there's a lot more people out there looking for jobs. And then a lot of companies were on hiring freezes for a long time. And now they have a lot of positions open, and there's just so many more applicants for those positions. So like Madison was saying, like you have to be so much more competitive and really precise in what you're presenting to the company before you even get an interview through your resume and cover letter. I agree that it's good to see not a cookie cutter resume, but something a little more creative, but not overly creative. I think it's
There's
still
a sweet spot, huh?
Yep, there's definitely, it needs to be a hybrid between the two. I like to see something that's not a cookie cutter resume because it shows me that you really care about how you're being presented, and you care about design a little bit, and that all of that is really important to the job. So it's really good to see that. And then again, just seeing that you can apply whatever experience you have, like tell me your skills, but also tell me how that works for me. So yeah, and then other just general advice again is Pottery Barn is not a place where I thought I would be working. I'm so glad I am working there now, but it wasn't in my top 20 companies that I was applying to. So you definitely just have to keep applying, make sure that every job you're applying for, you're editing your resume and cover letter to be in line with that application. You have a ton of different skills across the board, and you're not going to put all of those skills on every resume. If you're applying for a merchant role, it requires different skills than if you're applying for like a sourcing or design role. So I think it's really important to really understand and like read that job description and edit your resume to make sure it fits that role. And then I was going to say something else, but I lost my train of thought. So I think that's it.
Okay.
I have a quick thing for the resumes.
Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely, especially once you're into the industry, you know, have like industry experience that you can put on your resume. I remember when Challenge out of K-State was like, well, you know, how do I show you that I have industry experience? And, you know, the program has had so many, you guys, you know, you have the fashion shows now. It's, you know, if you have any organizations or Greek life or, you know, even academic organizations, put those on there. Show that, you know, you can wear the hats. Like you are, you know, okay, I was able to balance this, and this, and accomplish this, and this. And while it may not be like, okay, at an apparel company, you know, I'm in Manhattan, Kansas, I'm doing university, I may be working, I may be doing this. All of these experiences are going to help me in the quote unquote real world as it is. Because it's everywhere is like, I want a year experience. You're like, well, I'm just out of school. I had my internship. How can I get past that hump and show them that, you know, take a chance on me. I'm the new student.
That's really good to hear. That's good to hear. So everyone take note, you know, get involved, do some independent studies with your professors, have things to add to your resume, even if it isn't just like a retail job, right?
Yeah.
Get out there.
And just don't give up. Just like what Bailey and I just keep we just don't give up. You're gonna get knocked down, and you just got to pick yourself back up and keep applying, because that's when you'll find your job at the end of the tunnel.
Let me see. I'm trying to gauge time and which questions to kind of wrap things up. I think this is good. What are employers looking for during a virtual Zoom interview? How can students best prepare for these virtual interviews? Kind of touched on this a little. And then what are some of the best questions to ask potential employers? Because it does sound like, you know, the culture at the job is so important. So can you give us real quick, like, how do you find that out maybe during an interview a little, if that's something, you know, you do? Madison?
I'll toss this one to Ariana or Bailey, because I think they have good experience in this.
Okay, yeah. Ariana, do you want to start?
Sure. So for virtual and Zoom interviews, so make sure you have a decent background and good lighting. So I actually, before logging on with all of you, I went around to different spots and I was like, okay, where is my face not covered in shadows? I think also to stand out, I think that's really going to come across in kind of the conversation that you're going to have. I wouldn't put too much stress on what your background looks like or what you're wearing, just that it is appropriate. And it's really about your engagement into who you're speaking to, the questions that you ask. So like I said earlier, with prepping for like job applications and stuff, definitely if you get that interview, you absolutely want to do your research into the company and have your questions about what they're doing, and to really understand if it's the right role for you, if you're really going to like what you're working on, the team. Good questions to learn if it's the right culture. Like at the end, when a lot of times people ask, do you have any questions for us? You know, you can go through what's the company culture like? Do people go to lunches together? Do people, you know, are there company offered activities? Like my company will do happy hours when obviously pre-pandemic. And we'll do like karaoke nights and we'll go bowling together. And a lot of times, you know, companies also know now that the office culture is transparent and they want to share it because that also is a way to get talent into the company that they're looking for. No one now really wants to work for just, you know, 9 to 5 at their desk, blinders. Like no one's happy doing that anymore, and companies are aware of that. And so I wouldn't feel uncomfortable asking questions. I think also asking different types of like office benefits, like company benefits. A lot of times companies will include like benefits. So my company day, also pre-pandemic, when people were in the office, but every Monday is Bagel Monday. They give us bagels for breakfast. Fridays, they bring in lunch for the whole company and cater lunch, and it's a way to also like local restaurants around where our office is. They always partner with them to give them extra business. And then it's kind of this open like 2 hours where everyone just sits, talks. You get to kind of mingle with people that aren't necessarily always in your team around the office. And then other questions outside of company culture, you know, asking like what your day-to-day would look like. Who else outside of your immediate team would you be working with, and how would you be working with them? So you can see like what other aspects in the roles and responsibilities maybe that the interviewer didn't go over. I'm trying to think. Right now it's like really all that comes to mind that I had prepared.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think those are great tips for questions. Bailey, what do you want to add?
Yeah. When I was interviewing at Pottery Barn, actually, it was before pandemic, obviously, but I was not in San Francisco. So I did all of my interviews over Zoom anyway. So I think everyone now has a big benefit because everyone knows how to use Zoom. You know how to share your screen. You know that you need an appropriate background. You know, you at least from the waist up need to look presentable. So I think use those things to your advantage. Pull up your notes and the things you want to touch on in your interview, have it on a separate screen or have it in front of you, easily able to read. I think that's an advantage now because you can kind of keep those things in mind as you're having the conversation with the employer. So take advantage of those things for sure. Things that I really look for in candidates when I'm interviewing is I want you to tell me or show me somehow that you have looked at our website, you've looked at our product, and you come with a suggestion or two or a question about what you're seeing online. Even if it's just a comment of, I really loved the marketing you guys did for Earth Day. Can you tell me more about your initiatives there? Or I saw that the Riva rug is your #1 rug. Why do you think it's been so successful? So I think those are like really product focused or company focused questions like that are important because it shows you really care about what you're going to be doing and working with the product and sharing kind of your thoughts and ideas out the gate about those things. And then, yeah, everything Ariana said about questions about culture and benefits, I think are really important. A lot of times in interviews, I think we focus too much just about our skills, but just remember that you are interviewing the company as well. You want to make sure it's the right fit. So don't be afraid to ask questions like that, and kind of own the interview yourself that way.
Great. Jillian, was there anything you wanted to add?
I think both of those are, mostly what I would suggest. Great information. The one thing I would add on is I always would like it when the candidates would ask, like, how can they help the company, or what is the company like specifically looking for to accomplish by hiring this employee? It's not just about, I'm going to come in and do these tasks. It's, you're looking for a assistant technical designer. What are your goals in this? And just knowing that, you're on the same team and you're both oriented. They're not just coming in for their own benefit.
Usually if we wait a second, it comes back. Oh, there you are. You're back.
I don't know where I cut out, but basically, yeah, you can always just ask what
Okay.
the company's goals are too in that position. And, that will help you make your decision too on if your goals align.
That's great. There was another question for you, Jillian, about advice about owning your own business, and are there any kind of reliable sites online for advice for starting your own business? What is there? Do you have any advice surrounding that?
Be prepared to not sleep or relax. I think one of the biggest challenges that I have is there's always something to do. And if you're the one who's responsible for it, even if you hire people to do it, you're the one holding them accountable. So if anything gets done or doesn't get done, it comes back to you. That just kind of being, it's not definitely, we've all agreed it's not glamorous, the fashion industry, as much as you would think. There are definitely glamorous parts, but there's also the, I'm going to be, working on the website for 8 hours. There's, knowing that, okay, I'm being okay with no, I'm not going to have really much of a social life at all for certain periods of time or for certain seasons. And just kind of knowing what your goals really are and being true to yourself and having integrity with yourself and focusing on them. And because it's really easy to get distracted, oh yeah, I'm doing trend research, but I'm really just scrolling through Instagram for 6 hours and looking at stuff. And, something may come across where it's oh, this is inspiring and this is great, but it's okay, is this the best use of my time? Which
Instagram as trend research.
Exactly. Which, I've done that as part of a job for corporate too. So, which is amazing, but then it's, knowing everything you have on your plate and that time management. Literally, I just would Google and watch, University of YouTube videos on things about businesses, or I love the Harvard talks. They brought in Chiara Ferragini, they brought in Virgil Abloh, and just, people who you look up to, or who you're like I love Daniel Bernstein of We Were What, just kind of studying them and, just always teaching yourself and always learning and figuring, just kind of going with the whole problem solving that we've kind of all talked about. What do I have to do to get where I want to be? And does this align with kind of the life that I want to lead? I would say, but the first thing in starting your own business is just starting. You can have plan and get everything as perfect and have all these goals and everything you want to, but it's probably most likely half of it's gonna fall apart anyways. So just getting started and getting your vision up on a board and focusing one thing at a time. Because it's easy to get to that, Chanel, Coco, Kate Spade, glamorous, this is how it's going to be. But in reality, you're sitting at a sewing machine for 12 hours every day, half the time. So just being on it.
I want to say something off of what Jillian just said about always learning. I think that's a really important aspect to keep in mind. Just because you're graduated college does not mean that you're going to stop learning. I think the first year in the workforce is the most learning that you're going to do in a lifetime. And it is just a 360 from being in college to being in the workforce. You not only have to learn the technical and the nitty gritty of what are key performance indicators that the company uses, but you also have to learn the culture and how the team works and how communication works within the company, and the social cues, I would say. So I think the first year in the workforce is probably the hardest right out of college, just because you have a 360 of learning how to really integrate yourself with the company. But you're always learning. You're learning something new every day, even now being 2 years in. And I think you're learning new things every day of what the consumer's doing and what the industry is doing. And I think to stay also very competitive as a working professional, you have to keep learning. I listen to podcasts, keep up with the news, what's going on in retail. because that affects your business. And that also shows that you care about the business, but then you also get the perspective of this is what's happening in other companies, in other industries. This could potentially happen to us, or this is how we can stay proactive. So I think, yes, always learning is very much key. And I think that always has to be top of mind, and that just a kind of warning that the first year in the professional world is quite a challenge, but it's easy sailing after that.
Okay, that's so good to hear too. Yeah, you'll be learning the rest of your life, so we'll just
you'll be learning the rest of your life, but also, well, I know there's a lot of design students here and a lot of marketing students, but business, I think business skills ties into all of it. I think all of the panelists can agree that knowing your business terminology and the verbiage and the data that is used to kind of get a pulse on what your sales are doing is very much important. To go into the fashion industry just thinking that you're going to be doing marketing or, you know, design or whatever, buying, so there's so much data and math and business skills that back all of that up. So I would definitely keep that top of mind too, and pay very, very much close attention in your business classes, because you're always learning, and that is how the industry functions.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's really good to hear. Now, just a final question before we wrap up today, just real quick, each of you maybe like a couple sentences or something about what do you recommend to students who don't have a clear path in mind after graduation? Madison, any thoughts?
I didn't have a clear path after graduation. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Unlike Bailey, who knew she wanted to do buying, I did not know what I wanted to do. So I really read the job descriptions of what I was applying for and what interests me. So that's what drew me to retail coordinator, which then I'm in the retail operations department, which now I'm able to move into the marketing department if I wanted to. So I think also to keep in mind is that your first job is not for forever. Your first job is really the learning aspect of getting to know that company and the industry. And then from there, you're able to move into whatever you think that you want to do. But just keeping that in mind, your first job's not for forever. It's really key in learning. And that if you don't have a clear career path, just read the job description, see what interests you, and really go towards those.
Yeah, I know Ariana and Bailey, you seem to have had a clear path in mind since I've known both of you, and like where you wanted to end up. Jillian, is there anything you wanted to add to this?
I mean, I think Madison's right. Just reading the job description, even if it's not exactly your dream job, like go for it. You'll learn, especially, I mean, to be honest,
Internet connection.
recruited and I got recommended. And I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. And everyone's like, just take it and see. And it was the best advice I've ever gotten. And having that first step has led to so many other steps. You're not just experience opportunities and just go for it. Don't be scared. Don't undervalue yourself. Don't think you can't do things. Like apply. If it looks great, just apply for it. If you are having trouble figuring out what you want to do, just try a bunch of different things. Do some internships, like talk to mentors, or even just reach out on LinkedIn, say, hey, your job looks interesting. Can we call and chat about this? And, you know, it may lead to something. It may just be a great conversation where you learn, but just don't be hard on yourself. A year.
Completely agree. Internships are the best thing to figure out what you're good at and what you like. I thought I was going to love and be good at visual merchandising. I did an internship for the summer. I wasn't good at it and I didn't like it. And that's how I learned, is that internship that only lasted 2 months versus going out of college and trying to get a job. And I think experience is the best thing, especially in the internship realm, and or shadowing is a huge one too, to figure out what you like and what interests you.
That's great. Ariana, Bailey, was there anything else you want to add real quick to that?
I completely agree. I was just gonna say, it's okay if you don't know. I was very odd at 12. I knew I wanted to design lingerie, really bizarre. Um, but like my assistant, actually, she had no idea what she wanted to do. She, like Madison said, had lots of different internships, not even just in design, in buying, in photography. She helped with shoots. She had lots and lots of different areas, and I think that's definitely a great way to kind of dabble in things without jumping all the way.
Yep,
All
and
right.
I ditto
yes, Bailey.
internships, mentorship, find people on LinkedIn, job shadow, get really involved while you're in college, get a job in retail, all of those things.
That's great. Yes. This is really great advice. Let me just stop this right here.
And as you're dabbling in things, I think it's a really good aspect too. If you dabble in a few different sectors, visual merchandising, buying, you figure out you don't like it, you still bring that experience to the table at the end job that you apply and you get. You will still have, it's not all gone to waste. And I think that's something really important to keep in mind, that, oh, I failed, I didn't like it, I wasn't good at it. You still learned a lot of skills within the buying or the visual merchandising that you can bring to the table at your job, even if you're not good at it and that's not what you ended up doing. At least you know that point of view.
All right. Anything else before we leave today? Just a couple minutes left. Okay, well, I want to thank Madison, Ariana, Jillian, Bailey. Thank you so much for joining us here today for this alumni panel. It is an honor to have you back. It is so good to see what you're doing in the industry. And I know I speak for myself and the rest of the faculty when I say we're so proud and we're so happy to see you growing and thriving in the fashion industry. So it was great to have you today. And I also want to take a quick moment to thank our advisory board members. Thank you for donating your time. It is wonderful to have you back here at K-State, even if it's virtually. So thank you, and have a great symposium day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys, that was great.